All right, greetings, people. I'm hoping you can hear me. I'm trying to stream for the first time this year since they made it unnecessarily complicated, and I'm trying to figure out how to bring my guests into the stream. The how-to guides online haven't really helped, so let's take a look and see if we're having any luck. Is anybody? I want to see if anybody's actually like picking the stream up first and foremost. So, I've got one person watching. Hooray! Hope you're doing well. I want to see if anybody's actually like picking the stream up. So yeah, it's going to be an informal stream because I figured out how to do the stream, and I'm doing this mostly for the benefit of my patrons and subscribers. Let them know that this will be doing in the future, but this is a public stream, and I want everybody to just have a good time because I know everybody is stressed out, and going to have an informal conversation with our guests if I can figure out how to bring them in. We're having some technical issues. YouTube used to make this a lot easier than it is now, and it's no longer easy to live stream. It's extremely aggravating, actually. Let's take a look here. Oh, come on. So there are some people in the chat. Somebody saying I'm late. Well, for a non-scheduled stream, I can't possibly be late, can I? So there you go. Part of the reason I wanted to stream this morning is because my channel has actually been throttled by our glorious leaders at the platform here. And so, like, I'd actually love to know if people have, if this is the first time they've gotten a notice from a video from me in a long time, because I did a video making fun of our glorious opinion makers out there and their reaction to the Amazon Synod document, and that video got demonetized, and I kind of figured it would happen, but what I didn't expect to happen was all my views dropped by half, and then I looked in the analytics, and they're not recommending my videos to almost anybody. So if this is the first time you're seeing something from me, let me know. I'd love to know because I have my suspicions. Good afternoon from Central Europe. Well, glad to see you. Thank you, Tara. I do appreciate the good wish on there. If you hear me typing, I'm talking to my potential guests. But again, it used to be that all you had to do was launch something in Google Hangouts and share the link in Google Hangouts with somebody, and now you don't. That doesn't work anymore. So yeah, they made it more complicated than is necessary. Let's see. Happy to just have a simple chat with people if they want while we're waiting to get these technical issues sorted out. While I'm stumbling around, maybe I should have my toddler figure this out. He'd probably be able to handle this for me. Hello from Norway. It's been a while. Yes, it has been a while since I've been able to do this. When fellow shadow band channels get each other, yeah, I think you're right. I've never seen you before, but I got a notification. Well, welcome. I don't know who Father Emiliano Tardif is. If anybody has, maybe some of you can help me with this. I've been wanting to do talk about the Archbishop Lenga statement that he got in trouble for, But I spoke with somebody who's in Poland, and they're saying the way the media here is reporting on it is completely inaccurate, like completely inaccurate. That if you watch that video, he doesn't actually say the things he's accredited with saying. So what I'd like to find, even if it's in the original Polish, is a transcript, and I can get it translated myself, and then I can just read the transcript in English, so you can hear for your own hear for yourself in his own words what he said. I'd love that if anybody can help me out with that. It's my first time live streaming. With this system, yes. I had streamed all the time last year. I streamed there are, like, if you go through my videos, there's at least 3, if not 5, what I called trad streams. And I did one, and then about a week later, YouTube killed the Google Hangouts feature, which then complicated things greatly. It was extremely, extremely annoying. And yes, Chris says it is inaccurate, that Archbishop Lenga thing. That's why I haven't commented on it yet, because I had a feeling that it wasn't accurate in the slightest. So, my guests are trying to get me to go into Discord to make this work. Let's see. But yeah, I'm trying to connect with my guests, because, we're going to probably just have an informal conversation a little bit, as well as just, maybe answer some questions about general things and talk about, I don't know. I thought maybe we could talk about Lent. Maybe we could talk about, okay, Trevor, if you could find a way to get that transcript and send it to me, I can, like I said, I can get it in English. Let's see. Paulette's Mind gave up Twitter for Lent. Yeah, I think I remember you seeing you say that on what they call Fat Tuesday. Do I think Francis has a virus? No, they said he has a cold. Trust me, I honestly think that if he had the virus, he'd let you know. I mean, it fits, right? Apparently, you're going to be experiencing buffering. I'm going to go head over and take a look at some of these headlines to have chat informally with you guys while that is. Let's see. I'm over on Canon 212 right now. The headlines over there are always amusing, the way he writes them up. But Arizona education official to parents, take your kids out of public school. I've been telling you that for a long, long, long time. Don't have your kids in public school if you can. Francis could go before Benedict. I mean, who knows? Katie is absolutely right. If you read news knowing there's an agenda, you can still glean the information and be cautious of being persuaded. That is completely true. If you know how to read the news, I used to, I was on track to basically be one of in my education, to be sort of a journalistic type and not working in a journalism program. But I was being trained to be one of those kind of people. And once you learn how to read the news, you can go to almost any news site. That's why you sometimes see me using the Fish Wrapper, the National Catholic Reporter, because sometimes they let the mask slip a little more than they should. Are we familiar with the Kolbe Center? I'm familiar with the Kolbe Center. I think I even cite them in my dissertation, but I might be confusing them with someone else. But yes, I'm familiar with the Kolbe Center. I don't have a subscription of Culture Wars magazine. I'd like to, but right now, with the throttling of my channel, the financial resources are going to be a little bit tighter than I was anticipating. Hello from Jax, Florida. Well, hello to you. I think 9/11 and Corona have a lot in common. Maybe. My favorite story right now out of all of this is that over in China they're having they think somebody at the lab sold a tested animal to that animal market, which would be funny in a horrible way. Hello from Tampa. Well, hello to you, Rob. Public charter schools are better if you can find one. I don't know if my state even has them. We're going to homeschool my child. My wife is trained to be a school teacher, so we have that. I have that luxury, but not everybody does. I totally recognize that too. Discord is also giving us trouble. Of course it is. But yes, if anybody who's like a patron or has joined the channel or whatever, they hear this, then just know that you should start watching your messages from me to know about when I'm going to try to fulfill the Patreon promise that I've sort of not been able to do, which is to do at least a stream for the patrons periodically. Cardinal Zen being betrayed by the Vatican, sell out to China. Well, yeah. That's an ongoing story, I suspect. I've been wanting to cover that, but what I'd love to do is have a streaming conversation with somebody who is an expert on the church in China. But who knows? Like those people, especially in the kind of Catholic crowds I tend to run in online. Those kind of people are hard to find. I was in a Catholic school this morning, and the first thing to greet me in the entranceway was a big rainbow wall. Couldn't believe it. Yeah, I've been seeing people post about the condition of their schools in the, in Canada especially, that you see the James Martin agenda on full display there. Lewis, yeah, what's my hope for my work? I mean, the whole point of my channel is to get people at least thinking more like a traditional Catholic. I don't feel qualified to tell you what mass to go to and all that stuff, or who to go to mass with, or anything like that. But, learn more about the faith. It's why I feel like my most important videos that I do are the ones on the weekends that almost nobody watches, but I keep doing them, where people can learn more about the faith. And that's why I started doing a third video on the weekend, so that maybe a papal encyclical doesn't appeal to everybody. I totally get that. Or, something by Chesterton and that doesn't appeal to everybody. Again, I get that. So I added a video probably twice a month about, a saint or something. And I want to start doing a tribulation watch video, but I said this I don't know if I said this where I said this morning, but the one thing I want to do a tribulation video on, I can't, because it involves that country where what I'm calling the beer bug has started. That's what you'll hear me call it in the video tomorrow, the beer bug, where that started. So, but if you see any of the kind of cool stories like that, let me know. Send them to me in an email, and I'll happily cover them. Do I have Patreon? Yes, it's in the link to my description. What do I think of the Lord's pool closings? Given that it's supposed to be a miraculous font of healing, it seems like sort of a strange thing to be doing. Any specific topic? I'm trying. Well, once we get my guests on to be able to connect, my hope is to have us talk about Lent, and maybe some of what Trad Patrick talked about in his more recent video about not prepping, but given everything going on right now, just prudent measures a Catholic can take. Teach your children Latin if you can. I'm hoping to. From the Diocese of Gallup, I tag you in Twitter posts a lot. Okay, what's your handle on there? So it says Google account. What's your handle on Twitter there? Actually, Teresa says they do sell animals. They're done with it. It's exotic food. Yeah, you would think that a totalitarian dictatorship run by a communist party would actually be able to do things like, regulate things, but I guess not. The education agenda, John doing the globalist work. I actually plan to do a video series on how if you've been around on my channel a long time, back when I had some severe audio issues, I had a series I did called The Origins of the Crisis in the Church, and I actually want to revisit that. And then one of them is going to be how they destroyed Catholic education, because I know a lot about that from experience working in Catholic higher education briefly. I learned a lot from the people I was working with, because once I got my feet wet at the school I was at, all of a sudden I discovered the political battle internally to save the identity of the university and to try to save the school. And I learned a lot about Catholic education very quickly. And it's directly connected to John Dewey and what those people did to higher education and public education in general. I actually have at least 2 of Dewey's books on my shelf from my academic studies. And like almost anything, like from I would call it the liberal and socialist managerial types, there are things that you smile and nod at when you read, like, yeah, you're not wrong. But there's also a lot that is just satanic poison. And so I could go into details about that in a video sometime. I had been doing my sustainable development video series, but nobody watched them, so I stopped, because I think honestly that's where this managerial crisis in the world we're seeing is going. Are we having some luck with Discord? All right, so we've made a little bit of progress. And I should be able to have one of our guests here shortly. Let me go back to just the chat there. Let's see. Well, thank you, John Doe, for the... I wish our Lord and Lady to bless you and your family as well. I do think that the I think that all of the managerial education stuff you're seeing in the secular world with universities all the way down to kindergarten dovetails with the Global Education Pact. You see it through, what we'll call reproductive education in schools, and because that's if you've been watching those any of those videos, anytime they come up, you'll know that that's one of the main thrusts they're doing with the Global Education Pact, even if that's not what the Vatican may want to do with it. The beer bug, yes. Would I cover about failings of liberalism and of modernity? I can, but the thing is, as soon as I start talking about, as soon as I start talking about anything, like people think when I say liberalism, they think I'm talking about like Joe Biden. I'm not. Joe Biden is an intellectual liberal, but so is Ronald Reagan. It's a big political intellectual tradition that almost everyone in the American political system has been a part of until pretty recently. You don't get like Bernie Sanders isn't a liberal; he's a full-on socialist. But and I have a book that if I can get away with it, I'd love to record and transcribe called "Liberalism is a Sin," and I'll do an introduction to it defining what liberalism is. But it's a very important book. And has an imprimatur, meaning, and the introduction to that book actually details the history of a battle with the proto-modernists in the 19th century, the early modernists in the 19th century, trying to get them to accept sort of an American way of thinking about things and the modern Western European way of thinking about things. And that book is very good, and it details. Then there were 2 books written, both sent to Rome, and the one that got the imprimatur was the one condemning liberalism, and the other one got suppressed. I don't even know if you can get it anymore. Do I ever wonder on Thursdays if this is the day for 3 Days of Darkness, like Johanny said? No, because the 3 Days of Darkness, I believe Marie Julie Johanny said that the 3 Days of Darkness would start on a Thursday in the winter. And now I do sometimes wonder what in the winter means. Is that a Northern Hemisphere thing? Where is it going to start? Is it going to be starting in Europe where she was? I have no idea. A lot of these things. But we're pretty clearly, at least where I'm at, out of the worst part of winter, so I don't think so. But a couple months ago, it didn't exactly escape my mind. Francis Xavier Ford, we need to pray for his intercession. He is on the path to sainthood. I'm not actually all that familiar with him. If you want to send me an email, because I'm doing my Forgotten Saints series right now, if you want to send me an email with some links to some information, I will happily do it. Hi from Iowa. Thank you, Jody. Technology can suck. Yes, it can. Let's see. There's No Place Like Home is a very good summary series on Dewey Public Education and John Taylor Gatto's books exposing it. Not a Catholic, but 95% of the market. I'll see if I can figure it out. I'm guessing from that name they're in Kansas. Of course, if I do a Google search for that, well, let's see. Did I find the channel? Looks like I did. I'm just going to save that for later. Let's see. Back to the chat. It's hard to keep up with the chat. There's a lot of people watching right now, at least for me. Oh, let's see. Disinformation against the RCC is part of the NWO plan. Yep, almost certainly. You'd have to, El Padrino, you'd have to ask Tread Patrick why he does that. It's a complicated issue. We'll just say that. I have a personal rule of not bringing sort of infighting like this to my YouTube channel. I have argued with some of those guys before in the past, but I won't bring it to my YouTube channel. That's why I'm hesitant to say anything about it here. it was a promise I made to God once I started having like some success here. God bless you too, Daria. One of the smartest people I ever met in college was a homeschooled Jewish kid. He was like 16 and had his high school diploma, was working on his college degree already. And the culture shock he experienced when he first got there was amazing to watch. And that's one of the things I'm trying to, my kid is only 16 months old, so I'm not too worried about it just yet. But I'm going to have to figure out how to make it so there's not culture shock if he shows up at trade school or seminary or, heaven forfend, college somewhere. Hopefully by then it'll be fixed, but who knows. Yeah, and the Head Start stuff too. I mean, yeah, Spooky Cat. That's what I'm referring to. The Plague of Locusts. It's Africa. I would love to be able to find a way to report it if I could figure out a way not to talk about that country. Because if I call it like what they sometimes call it, like, the Middle Kingdom. I mean, it's a little pagan sounding, but it might work as code as long as people don't take it like the wrong way. Like, why would I want to pray in the vulgar tongue of Latin when you could use the biblical Greek? Because I'm a Latin Rite Catholic, and the Latin was one of the three languages sanctified by our Lord on the cross when Pontius Pilate hammered the thing above his head, and our blood. I mean, there's theology behind the three sacred languages, and I'm not countersignaling Greek. If you're Eastern Rite Catholic, stick with that. Why use Greek when you could use Hebrew? Language is language. Yeah, Lord Bluntwell. It's not that I'm ignoring you. It's that the chat is hard to follow sometimes. Fatima movie coming soon. I'm a little nervous, partially because I'm the one guy who didn't like Paul, Apostle of Christ. I like the scenes with St. Paul, and I liked the scenes with St. Luke. But I kept wondering when St. Peter or Clement or Linus were going to show up as the Bishop of Rome, or at least be referenced, and I didn't see that. If they were referenced, let me know. I just don't remember it. But yeah, I'm one of the few who didn't particularly like that film. Joe, Mikey, did you retract the message, or was that done by something else? And sorry, HJB, you're promoting Sedevacantism on my channel, especially the absolute worst Sedevacantist channel or website, and I actually block that website. They are, if you want to people talk about grifters, those guys are grifters. So, but yeah, I don't know if Joe, if you retracted your message or if that was done by the filter. So yeah, I've mentioned this before. I don't know if people are aware of this. I mentioned this in a live stream months ago, that people, when they were doing super chats, I watched other live streams where where YouTube would take their money from them, but not let their message go through, and then they would donate it to some group that was related to whatever the offense was given in the chat. So just use a little caution. I learned more Latin at Mass than 2 years in high school. That's where I'm learning my Latin, is at Mass. You guys do I think the beer bug is a punishment from God? My wife told me the first thought she heard when she first heard about this was chastisement. There were early Roman unnamed Christians as well. Hey, a super chat. Let's see. Getting notifications from Discord. There seems to be an attempt. Yes, this is apologies for amateur hour here with the streaming. Paul, Apostle of Christ, was problematic insofar as it did not even attempt to show what we know about the liturgical practice of the early church. Also, Peter was referenced. He was referenced. Was he referenced as being there? Okay. I was a little mystified that there was no early mass depicted, whatever it was. That was maybe I should go watch it again. Padre Pio's visions regarding 3 days darkness will correspond. There's some question, of course, about the authenticity of the Padre Pio one, and I went back and forth on that before I did that video. But well, ultimately, I started getting some like weirdly timed things where people were asking me about the 3 Days of Darkness and Marie Julie Johanny at the time, so that's why I did it. Including beginning on a bitter cold night and ending with springtime. So, maybe, like, since it's not actually technically winter yet. Lord knows the plan, and people do bad things for Satan. God's size uses it, that's all. Well, isn't Paul an Asian martyr preaching at that time? Well, we know Paul died in Rome. Yeah, still working through the technical issues. Let's see. So yeah, for those wondering about the technical issues you're noticing here, I've been trying. I found an online sort of tutorial on how to live stream, but it didn't include how to like invite other people. So. Katie, I don't know, because here's the thing: if the beer bug could be chastisement for the Moloch worship, I mean, look where it centered. Look where it started. I mean, they're the world champions of that stuff. But I don't know if it's. I don't think it's controlled personally. I have to be careful how I talk about it, right? So, but we'll see how things play out. I do think it was. I personally, I'm erring on the side of human stupidity on this, that it was an accident, and that you're already seeing like certain types exploit it for their own ends. And I don't mean the people trying to sell you, survival packs or things. Well, if you're worried about your grandkids, I mean, if are the parents apt to listen or even be in a position to be able to homeschool? Anybody can homeschool, but a lot of people think they have to have multiple, have a two-income household or whatever. I'm not a believer in that. We live well below the poverty line, but we're blessed to have the income that we have, and we're gonna make it work. A lot of us have accepted this materialistic culture we live in that we have to succumb to it, and that we have to live by the standards of the world, buy the newest gadget, replace our car every other year, eat out all the time, do all these silly things. I haven't seen a movie in the movie theater since like the last one I saw was something my wife wanted to see, and it was in January 2018. So, I don't know if I've heard that the 3 Days of Dark. If you're experiencing buffering, my apologies. I don't know what the issue is. I would say you have to worry about my my words not syncing up with my lips, but my issue, let's see, what are my thoughts regarding the leader of the party of Moloch's threats against the two recent justices? It's a really dumb thing for him to be doing. Really, really dumb. And I'm not surprised that the current state of things in the United States right now politically is that the mask is slipping and people are seeing things for what they really are. By Pacamama swim floaties for the coming flood. That could be cool. Event 201, the Gates Foundation had an event discussing, was it plant? I don't know. It's sort of one of those things where you see we'll call them disasters happen, and there's frequently sort of formal exercises happening near them. I have to be careful again how to say this stuff. Like, a lot of people want to talk in the chat about things that I could lose my channel for. That's just the fact. Like, why do you think I haven't done a video on this topic yet, even though it's got direct implications for the church? You have to get your curriculum approved by the Department of Education. I don't know what state you're in. I'm in Oklahoma, and we have like the most permissive laws for homeschooling in the entire country. It's pretty good. All right, my only joint question about economy or politics? No, I'll take questions about almost anything. I may not be able to see it because the chat flies. People are just wanting to talk about questions like about economics and politics, which it's not really what I do on my channel anyway. So, but let's see. I assure you that Pacamama floaties are made of heavier objects that will sink by a proper life preserver made of buoyant materials instead. Yeah, just go down to, Walmart or, if you have an Atwoods near you or any of those kind of places, any place with an outdoor store, and just buy a good old-fashioned plastic one. Yeah, I don't know about the implications for reproductive, the implications for that. I am prepared to be able to hunker down for about a month if I need to. I'd rather not, though. You're in Pennsylvania. That doesn't surprise me. The politics of that state suggests that they would want to more closely regulate it. There is a Catholic prophecy that England will flood from the chastisement. You can go watch my video on Alois Erlmeyer. I've got a second one of his that I'm going to do here in the next month or two. And it lines up with some of the things Malachi Martin said, for what that's worth. For the question here about living in the country in a community, there have been people trying that in Oklahoma near Clear Creek Abbey for years, and the problem is it's so far away from any urban center that jobs are nearly impossible to get. I have done an Our Lady of a video. I have done one on Our Lady of America. It's short because I know the message is longer than what I gave. I focused mostly on the issue of purity and its timing. So if you haven't checked it out, go look for it. I do a prophecy video 1 to 2 times a month. I plan to do a video on what the church says the signs of the times must be for the arrival of Antichrist, for those who care about that too. Will the Anglican Church reunite with the Catholic faith? Eventually, yes. They will eventually reunify. That's practically, I'm a full believer on that. Sorry that Erlmeyer video gave you anxiety. Yeah, this is why when people sometimes ask me, why am I not on board of a lot of the militarism of the United States lately. On Twitter I was, not happy with some of the stuff involving Iran a few months ago, and it's simple, because you don't poke the Russian bear. That's why. I've read enough of these prophecies to be really freaked out. Yeah, so trying to test a mic here in Discord. But we're still trying to get my guests to come on. Oh, let's see. I got to scroll back up in the chat now. But the state is really annoying. Yeah, you're attached. You're too attached to leave. I thought I was too attached to Oregon to leave too, because I got family and friends there. But I applied for a job that I didn't think I'd get and got interviewed for it eventually and moved to Oklahoma. And even though that place ended up closing, I didn't want to move back. I didn't realize how much anxiety I got being in Portland until I went back to Portland Christmas of 2018. If you've been a longtime subscriber, you'll remember when I did my I took the only days I've missed putting videos up were around Christmas, and I still had a few videos pre-planned. That was when my first Malachi Martin video went up, was then, as well as a couple others. And during that time, I was in Portland and my anxiety was through the roof. It was crazy. To PS 90, 91, and Our Lady of America lately. I'm not sure what PS... Oh, you mean Psalm 90 and 91? Okay. Yes, I do want to do more on a Lois Erlmeyer. There's... If I had to tell you what I thought that the events leading to what the Liberation Church is going to look like, I'm pretty sure it's going to be a major war. That doesn't mean that there isn't going to be something else like, people like the big celestial object going through the galaxy, the solar system idea. That's, that could be part of it too, for all I know. I'm not a prophet, but I just think it's going to be something really gross. I think our ruling elite is going to get the war at once. If you want to send me Byzantine, if you want to send me an email with about Our Lady of, I'm not going to try to pronounce the name, including a phonetic way to pronounce the name, because I can barely speak my own language when it comes to words that are foreign to me, it becomes a problem. But if you want to send me an email, I would be happy to do a video on a lesser known Marian apparition in the West. So yeah, it like what you said here is the only problem is that Western Catholics that cover it screw up what she said. So send me information on how to properly do it, because it's like it goes back to the Bishop Lenga thing. I've heard from Polish Catholics that I know that the Western media, both the media we tend to like and the media of like the Crux and the others, are all reporting it wrong, like grossly wrong. Like they don't think he actually called Pope Francis a heretic. As an example. Kimberly, that when I did that Archbishop, that video, the most recent Schneider video from Bishop Schneider, not Archbishop Schneider, he released 2 statements that day actually, and I could do the other one, and it's actually about receiving the sacrament receiving the Eucharist during times of pestilence. So it's a short statement. I could probably do that one if people want. It's worth reading. Hello, Naja. Aquinas laws, they say that we're closer than ever to reunification. Whether that means anything in the grand scheme of a 400-year schism, I don't know. I like the narrative that it's a 1,000-year schism, but it's not. They went back into there was briefly reunification, and then a schism happened again at the request of a sultan of all things. It's one of those funny things. Reading, Pennsylvania. I'm not familiar with Reading. I've got a friend up in Pottsville. I don't know where that is in relation to you, though. Gates were part of a 15 who met in New York October 2019 to basically simulate the beer bug. Yep, I've heard about that. That the Ukraine would be blessed if it was Catholic. Well, that's believable. Communion on tongue has been banned here, which is weird because if you want to spread a virus, you'd actually have more hand-to-hand contact than that. That's actually, I think, part of what Bishop Schneider's statement is about, that the people are handling this literally the opposite of how you should do it. Pottsville's 1 hour north of Reading. Okay, very cool. Let's see. Trying to do 3 different things here. Route 61, just... That, it's funny is, Byzantine, if you look at there's a friend of mine who reminds me that there was actually one good document out of the Second Vatican Council, like one unequivocally good one, and it was a document begging the Eastern rites to keep their liturgy intact and not to Romanize them. And I have a Maronite friend of mine who, when he introduced me to the Maronite rite, it looked like a Novus Ordo Mass, and he said there's a big movement within the Maronites to re-embrace the Maronite liturgy fully. A general summary of the Fatima message. Oh, if you mean that as part of That message, sure. Video on the Shroud of Turin. That's interesting. I could put it on my sort of to-do list. It might work. There's a lot of controversy, of course, around it, but yeah, if I did it, I'd probably want to connect it to the devotion to to our Lord's face. The Gates Foundation is responsible for what I would call medical Moloch worship in the Philippines and Brazil. I did hear about the diocesan priest on Twitter who's looking for a place to stay. I wasn't aware that the reason was because he was saying the Novus Ordo Missae, or he was refusing to say it, and that he uses the pre-1962 missal, which probably means now is it the missal of 62 or the missal of 1955 that he's using? Summorum Pontificum gives him that right, and I love how bishops just ignore it, but it's the state of things right now. When you say Orthodox, I understand. Let's see. Urban, I think, has a comment about Triad Patrick and Tim Gordon. I will repeat what I said earlier. I don't bring a lot of those kind of things to my channel because I try to keep my channel focused on what's going on in the church and preserving traditional teachings and things with the weekend documents. So, well, thank you, Leonham, for the super chat. I'm sad that we can't stay to hear this through the end. Life kicks in. God bless you, Anthony. Well, thank you, Leonham, for all the hard work you put into this witness. Take care. You take care as well. I would put this up to watch for people after. I'm not sure that it's that interesting, honestly, since I'm not doing a formal format for what I'm doing. Do a video on Our Lady of Guadalupe. Tell me, I want to do a video on Our Lady of Guadalupe in general, and I have my suspicion is that Our Lady of Guadalupe is sort of like one end of the book end of those kinds of Marian apparitions. Our Lady of Guadalupe and then Our Lady of Buen Sucesso, good success as people have erroneously translated it, all the way through Our Lady of Revelation, most recently during the John Paul II pontificate. I think that Ancient Aliens of all shows tried to prove the Shroud is true. I was not aware that they tried to do that. That's interesting. Wow. If you want to email me a link to that episode, I wouldn't mind watching it. Of course, they probably went with our Lord as an alien nonsense. I wouldn't be surprised. Hey, Triad Patrick's actually in the chat. Triad Patrick, they basically said that you would that you should debate Tim Gordon. They're very confident in your ability to win that debate. That's all I'll say. Does Father Nix not have a bishop? Because there was another priest, actually. It's not Father Nix, but there was another priest, and I saw that Taylor Marshall had messaged him. So hopefully that turns into something good. The call to delatinize precedes Vatican II by many years. Even Leo XIII called for it. If you've been around a while, I'm working through Leo XIII's encyclicals slowly but surely. In fact, I've got another encyclical of his tomorrow. The patrons and those who join the channel, all of it, have access to it already. But yeah, that'll be up not tomorrow. It'll be up Saturday. Took cotton balls with blood and painted an image. Please give me a break. Yeah, Ancient Aliens trying to prove the Shroud is legit is actually a bad thing. Most people see them as frauds. That you could. I definitely, I don't have an issue with the Eastern Orthodox per se. It's other than that they need to be united with the Supreme Pontiff. But beyond that. And of course, there's a lot of issues with that right now that they admit themselves. Father Marshall Roberts, that's right, because I remember Taylor Marshall making a crack about his name. The biggest call to delatinize came from soon-to-be Saint Andre, I'm not going to trip over their name, who helped create the Ruthenian Recension. See, like, I don't know much about the Eastern Rites. I would love to actually, like, do a stream with someone who could actually just educate my audience on the Eastern Rites of the Church. And the benefits of, one, knowing, being familiar with the Eastern liturgies, being familiar with the Eastern Rites of the Church, but also, you know, remaining in your own right as much as it, unless it's absolutely the only option you have. Put it up, Anthony. I don't know what you... Oh, you mean like this episode? Yeah, I can. It's not, you know, I won't promise it's a super great episode or anything. Father Nix is a diocesan hermit with regular income now. I've met a diocesan hermit one time. It was one of those... It was one of the first major encounters I ever had with somebody who I said, you know, that my wife and I attend the Latin Mass, and they went from being very kindly to rage-filled eyes. It was a very strange experience. Oh, of course they said that the shroud was from an alien. I'm ignoring all the comments about debating. I'll let you guys talk about that amongst yourselves. Odd that Orthodox churches existed in a formerly majority Catholic Iberia. Yeah. Yeah, there are drugs in the works for the thing going around. It's interesting, to say the least. Pay attention and please discern carefully when it comes to that stuff. I may look into that Matt Fradd interview. Well, thank you, Nadja. It is appreciated for the super chat. But there's a technical issue on. They think it might be on my side. I don't know if Discord likes my two things going on at the same time or something. I don't know. I'll have to do more research. But I know that I can, at least for my patrons, I can make this work. The private me talking to them in a private stream, so that'll work. At least that solves that. But I want to be able to start having guests again, especially like Catholics with channels that are smaller, so we can get more. So people have more options for things they can listen to. Victory dance soon. What do you mean by victory dance soon? Oh, yeah, never mind. I know what you mean. Will the great Catholic monarch come after the chastisement? I believe my last video on that implied heavily that he would come up at the very tail end of the chastisement, like the war portion of the chastisement. At all the salty comments on the Church and the Libertarian video, a lot of libertarianism is a liberal ideology, and people don't like it being told that. At the end of the day, I'm not going to go into it now, but a good book on that is probably Chris Ferrara's "Liberty, the God That Failed." That's a good one. Or "Liberalism is a Sin" is a much smaller book. It's interesting that it's referred to as the writer of Pestilence wears a crown on. Yeah, I try not to think about that, because I think that if this is it, it's going to be... This might just as a hint, probably not the real deal. A lot of Malachi Martin sayings line up with what is going on with the Kievan Ukrainian Catholics would be essential to the conversion of Russia. Yeah, I would not be surprised if the Ukrainians are offering a lot of their suffering up for the conversion of Russia right now. Chloroquine only costs 4 cents a dose in the third world. Yeah, you know what's going to happen when it gets to America, though. Confiscating money in Wuhan. I haven't heard about that. Mr. Ecclesiam Noel Salz, no comment. Can't wait for the Catholic monarch. I'm a Charles Cologne fan. The key is living to get there, because one of the things I've noticed is that the United States in those war prophecies isn't mentioned much, and when it is, it's not usually good. So I don't know if you're an American. I'm an American, and I'm a little concerned with some of the stuff I've read about that. I don't buy that he was a plant of the elites. I think what happened, my thought with Malachi Martin is that the key for understanding his role in things was he was the sort of the secretary of Cardinal Bea at the council. That's how he had access to the Third Secret of Fatima and all that stuff. And the accusations of him being bribed off by some of these groups, if it's true, it was probably to try to keep him quiet. He was glorified secretary. Cardinal Bea is the person who gets overlooked in all of this, and I just don't know enough about him to make a video talking about him. The money is infected. Is that why they're doing it? Okay. New video on the chastisement and welcome. I think they're great to make people meditate on their state in life and motivate them to take action. And that's a good point about one thing. I don't think people need to panic about things going on right now, because right now, people act like it's the end of the world. But you could get hit by a car tomorrow. You could choke on your dinner. You should be in the habit of going to confession on a regular basis. I don't give spiritual advice much because it's not my place, but I can give you the most basic stuff like pray the rosary and go to confession. If you have the luxury of being able to get a spiritual director, find one. I don't have that luxury, but you should always be prepared as if today's your last day. Is Latin actually needed in the traditional Mass? Well, in the traditional Latin Mass, yes, it is the actual language to use in it. But the Eastern rites, as long as they've held on to their liturgy, and I don't know enough about that, the first traditional liturgy I went to was a Byzantine liturgy. It was beautiful. I didn't understand it because all I was familiar with at the time was a Novus Ordo attempted to be run, sort of a middle of the road one. Just got notification testosterone levels on the decrease. They've been on the decrease for 40 years. They're 40% lower now than they were 40 years ago. It's like losing 1% a year or something. Yeah, that's true, Byzantine. People can be called out of their right, but again, you discern carefully. Trad Patrick recommends people read Father Fahey if they want to learn about the Church's take on Masonry. Yes, Father Fahey is good in general. I have done research on the Siri thesis. I don't buy it. I don't buy into any of the Sedevacantism variations. I once saw an ad somewhere for getting a blessed candle done in the traditional way online, and so I sent in a query, and they sent me a reply saying I needed to do the thing, that I needed to swear allegiance to Cardinal Siri and those who came after him, and at that point I'd lost interest. Oh, welcome, Clayton Lee. What are my thoughts on transhumanism and people like Elon Musk and Ray Kurzweil and Grimes? I wish Elon Musk would stick to rocketry. I don't know. I'm not familiar with the others. There's an interesting channel that do these kind of long form videos. They call it Truth Stream Media. They do a lot on transhumanism. Go check out some of their stuff. They're including their thing on the minds of men. They've shown that video. It's a full on documentary that they've shown at some festivals. I'd recommend go watching it. I don't know if they're a Catholic channel or not. There's nothing degenerate about what they do. In fact, they call out paganism and degeneracy in the culture, so it's at least not a bad thing. As a Catholic, you should always be ready for the end of your life. You should, yes. Absolutely. Jesus literally calls us to be constantly prepping for death. Yes. If you're prepping for survival, to survive something bad happening, you should be you're also preparing for death, because you never know. Once mentioned that Father Ripker once mentioned that an old rite in one Eastern liturgy that involved the priest jumping over burning charcoals. Interesting. Glad that Florida's picking me up. Well, Peter, I am a distributor, so yes, although I haven't done many videos on it, because right now, anytime I talk about it, people start yelling about socialism, and it's not socialism. It's literally the opposite of socialism, but, someday I will, once things calm down on that front, probably. Did I see Cardinal Dolan at the Met Gala in 2018, the theme being Catholic imagination? Yeah, I did a video on that a long time ago, back in 2018. It was very trying. Peshian economists. Yeah, basically. If you're not familiar with Pesh or Father Vincent McNabb, especially those of you who are really looking at the question of the rural question, but living in the country, I recommend the book. There's either Nazareth or Social Chaos by Father Vincent McNabb, or can't remember the other one. Trad Patrick, if you remember it, just put it in the chat. They're very good. He was a Dominican priest who was friends with Chesterton and Belloc, and he wrote mostly about trying to return to the land. He was like sort of one of the leaders of the Back to the Land movement at the time. Well, thank you, Christina. I don't expect anybody to agree with me 100% of the time. I would be worried. If Elon Musk would be interested to put a giant crucifix in orbit, it could be interesting. Well, if anybody wants to crowdfund it and then pitch it to him, I mean, well, the worst you can say is no. Do I know much about the argument about the validity in the new form of episcopal consecrations? I don't. What I can do is I can go find that encyclical from Leo XIII where he made that declaration and put it up if you want. Chuck Meisler has a good video on transhumanism. Good to know. Talk about Father Pesch. Well, he was an economist in the late 19th, early 20th century in Germany, and his economics raised some eyebrows in England, and some have speculated that it led to the First World War. I will leave it at that for now. I need to read more Pesch myself. Trad Patrick is actually more of an expert on Father Pesch than I am. I do need to bone up on him though, because I'm in my dissertation revision phase, and I'm getting close to my chapter on economics. So, and I'd like to, help bring him back by at least giving him a couple footnotes and maybe a quote in my dissertation. How's my Lent going? Well, it's going all right. I think I don't go into generally what I give up for Lent publicly. I did that with I did that recently once, but it's going okay. Essentially trying to restore discipline in my life, because if I restore the discipline, then my weight issues will take care of themselves, because I can do all that stuff, and because it's bleeding into everything, and discipline is usually has a spiritual dimension, and I'm pretty sure that is with me. All Eastern rites are valid. Yes, they are. Some particular churches that adhere to these rites have adopted Latin practices. Yeah, so if you go to a Maronite divine liturgy, it's valid, even though in a lot of ways it looks like your neighborhood Novus Ordo mass. And I don't mean even though as in to suggest the Novus Ordo isn't valid. I don't get into that argument with people, but honestly, if you can find a Maronite parish to go visit, that might be a good intro to Eastern rites for people if all you've been to is the Novus Ordo Missae. The format of this live stream, very chill. I should do a chill, live. Maybe do a Saturday morning chill public live stream. People, get your cup of coffee. One of the things I gave up for Lent was coffee, except on Sunday. And I only have it on Sunday because I need to be perky and awake for my long drive to Mass every Sunday. But yeah, maybe I should do a Saturday morning chill live stream. I don't know. Carve a giant crucifix on Mars. I would fund that. Well, got to get there first. Yeah, Peter, I agree. Generally, I'm a big believer that, as Chesterton said, the problem with capitalism is that there aren't enough capitalists. If you had more property in more people's hands, and if we encouraged more small businesses, I think you would have a much more stable society. Now, frankly, that is one of my things that I love about it. Actually, one of the things I love about my country, the United States, is that you can start a business and fail, and start a business and fail, and start a business and fail, as long as you can get. Any flat Earth Catholics here? I don't prescribe to the flat Earth thing, but I don't spend any time on it either. Is the asteroid in Revelation the same chastisement? It might be. If you talk about wormwood, it's as Sister Lucia said of Fatima, that if you want to know what the third secret of Fatima is, go read Revelation. I think it's chapters 8 through 13. That's all there. I actually might do a video where I just read Revelation chapter 8 through 13 with a little bit of the background that she provided. Please watch Father Ripper's content on flat Earth and geocentrism. Could be a comet, not an asteroid. I mean, maybe. Flee to the Fields. Is that the one by that's the book by Father McNabb? Yeah. Father McNabb is one of those lost treasures, and I did an essay. I did an essay on him for once, and had the typical response my weekend videos do. And I understand that people don't necessarily that my weekend content is for very specific, goes to very specific tastes, and that's fine. Amish country, and NPSWM lives in Amish country. Yeah, I live in what they call a rural city, where you drive 5 minutes out of here, and I could drive 5 minutes from my house and be someone's farmland. I have a side job where I deliver pizzas, partially because it keeps me grounded in with working people, and because and it enables me to save. And I was doing a delivery one evening, and I turned a corner in the part of town I hadn't been in, and all of a sudden I went from like a typical suburban neighborhood to there was someone's horse gate, complete with I don't even know what it's called. It looked like the carousel you see in that you might see on a ranch where they have for the horses and such. And it was very strange to just turn a corner like that. Yeah, I was wondering where you at. If you're all is grace, if that's what you mean, yeah, my channel got throttled. Go back to my video. I can explain what happened too. If you watch my video, they scream and they cry, where I kind of make fun of the opinion makers and the reaction to the recent document from Francis. If you look at the views I got on videos all the way up to that video, not counting weekend ones, again, not counting weekend ones, those don't get much views, you'll see that they all got cut in half. And then I went into my analytics to look to see what was going on, and I saw that I was getting like almost no referrals anymore. These things are temporary typically until they play with their algorithm again, so I got to play nice. Which is why I ask people those of you who watch my content, to share my videos and things like that. And it has hurt my pocketbook pretty severely, but I'll get through it. Maronites are very welcoming. Like, honestly, like, the Lebanese folks are some of the nicest people I've ever met, and the Maronite parishes that I've gone to have been really nice. How's far my commute to my mass on Sunday, and who runs the Tealman there? It's a fraternity parish. It's an FSSP parish, and it's about 90 miles. And we have a toddler who thankfully sleeps most of the time on the way there and back. Let's see. I mean, Kimberly, when she says you can see the curvature of the earth if you go high enough, I can see the curvature of the sky living here in Oklahoma because I live in very much big sky country. Yeah, Revelation. Yeah, Teresa, if you think that's a good idea, I'll take that advisement added to my list. And I just want to find a way to frame it that's not just me reading my Dewey Rames Bible. Although I'd probably use the Knox because it's easier language. Still says the same message. Have to go and work now. Do a live stream tomorrow. All right, Patrick. Sorry it didn't work out to have you on. Also, we fast in Lent. Yes. I am fasting. I've, given things up, as it were, but I'm also doing some other things too. Hello from Australia. Well, God bless you, Johanna. Celestial event of Revelation 12, great sign, was fulfilled on September 23rd, 2017. I must have missed it if you want to send me what it was. My wife's a stay-at-home mom. She's a stay-at-home mom. She's in the other room right now with our kid who is going to... If I say he's getting, having a therapist come talk to him, that sounds wrong, but he's having trouble learning to walk. Whenever he takes steps, his feet are always curved inward, so he's got someone who's going to come help him with that. That 90-mile drive, thankfully, where I live, is not that long. I mean, yeah, it's an hour and a half, but it's not that bad on a Sunday morning, and it's all through farm country for the most part. I take a toll road to cut the drive down by 20 minutes. Oh yeah, okay, I get the joke. Go to Census Fidelium and look for the geocentrism content on the channel. Yeah, it's honestly, Census Fidelium is one of my favorite channels. I don't watch a lot of Catholic content anymore, but Census Fidelium is one I always make time for. Earth is a round globe. If you pray to God hard enough for something with all your heart, He will give it to you. I do agree with that. As long as it conforms to His will, yes. And if you're a good Catholic, you should also be praying for your will to conform to the will of the Father. can't wait for the Venezuelan socialism posting from Trump when the election gets off. That'll be entertaining. Although, I don't know if they'll need to, given how things went. HJB message retracted. I'm guessing you deleted the message. The word Lent in French means slow, thus we fast in slow. Gotcha. May God grant you and your family many blessings, years, and health and happiness. I thank you. My health has been pretty poor this last year, which is why I'm being careful with my fasting in Lent. There is zero proof for this round, and the very idea is pagan. Well, okay. I don't spend a lot of time on the shape of the earth thing. It's not something I care that much about, honestly. But I'm happy that I've helped you revert back to the faith. Keep me in your prayers, please. I need all the help I can get. I cannot stand the turnpike here. It is insanely expensive. Yeah, my drive to and from Tulsa is $5, basically $2.50 each way, but you have to have $7.50 to make it work. Jody Young for the super chat. Thank you. I like this live thing. I do too. I would like to do it with have a guest. That's how we tried to start, but it didn't work out this time, and I'll have to do a little more research. Thank Catholic Mom with Coffee. Thank you for the kind thoughts. I do appreciate it. Well, thank you, Varam, for that. That I'm humbled that I'm in that company, because Sensitive Alien was really critical for me learning the traditional faith. Them, and I'll be honest, I also watched things from Father Hess and from others who were much more on the fringe of the traditional movement. But through all of them, that's how I learned the traditional faith, and eventually decided to start doing this, I guess. Okay, let's see. Yeah, my guests aren't going to be able to happen. So if anybody's got any kind of questions they want to ask, well, good morning to you, Jeep Guy. Feel free to just ask, either through the normal chat if I can keep up, or if you want, through the cheapest super chat you can possibly do. Just either way, let me know. $2.60 each way, I think. Yeah, that's how it is for me. And sometimes the further you go, the more you have to pay. So yeah, and I understand. And PSWM, I purposely take a slightly longer route to Mass. That's about 5 minutes to my drive, because it keeps because it does save me about $2.50, which doesn't sound like much, but every week it adds up pretty quickly. Why do traditional Catholics accept the modernist extraordinary form of the Mass when the true traditional Mass is still celebrated? Most people don't know that what we're told is the 1962 Mass and of the traditional Latin Mass is an edited version. Most people don't know that, and it's a very unpolitically correct to explain what they changed. Just what I'll say. I would suggest you look into what the differences are. You'll find it interesting if you're not familiar. Do I have a couple weeks food stored in case we're quarantined? Yes, and I actually plan for I live in a part of the country where if you say you should have a month's food on hand, nobody thinks that's unusual. Because, just 100 miles north of me, you could be buried in a foot of snow during the winter. So having a month's supply of food is not a bad thing. I do plan, though, to, once this blows over, to give a bunch of my extra food to a homeless shelter near me. So if you feel weird about preparing for bad things by buying a bunch of extra food, plan to give it away when it blows over. Where is McCarrick? Last I heard, he was in Florida. I was very amused when somebody tried to fool Church Militant, by the way, into thinking that he had died. That struck me as really funny. But no, he's apparently in Florida somewhere. That's all I know. What other topics do you plan on making videos on? I plan to keep up with We Were Warned. There's almost no shortage of material on that. I would like to do a return to my series on the origins of the crisis in the church. If you look at my channel, Be Warned, those videos have a lot of bad audio quality, worse than I have now. It took me a while to work through that, and I had to have a lot of help. I'm not tech savvy. But I would like to do a video on how they destroyed Catholic education, and probably have to be a fairly long video, because I would also need to talk about how they destroyed public education, how public education got turned into a political tool. It takes a long time discernment, and the ultimate conclusion must be, I never belonged in my birthright, and God wants me elsewhere. That's from Byzantine. That's actually, these kind of decisions should be made with some careful discernment. And remember, Byzantine and Antiochian liturgy, it's all Catholic, right? That's why I suggest to people to go to an Eastern liturgy, show up, learn about it, and show up and show up and ask questions ahead of time, as if like it's just I like to show up to mass where I go early because there at least once a month there's some new face who has never been to a traditional Latin mass, and there's this bad stereotype that trads at the traditional mass are bad people who don't like outsiders, and so I try to find these people and be nice to them and maybe warn them about the veil police, because we don't have the veil police too much in my parish, but I did see a bad experience once and it made me mad. Is the extraordinary form in English licit? I mean, maybe. I don't know. That's above my pay grade. That's weird. I know that Fulton Sheen said the extraordinary form mass in English once, so take that for what it's worth. I've more geocentrism. Store food for tornadoes, floods, blizzards. Pat's 13 says store food for tornadoes, floods, blizzards, etc. Yeah, the Old Testament is full of accounts of people doing basic stuff like that. I mean, it's prudent. And then you could just, again, give away to the homeless. Take it as an opportunity to love your neighbor. And if something really horrible happens, you still have the duty to love your neighbor. Your neighbors will probably not be all that well prepared. So I'm not suggesting, this is not me telling you to go visit, prepare with fill in the blanks name.org or whatever and buy a 900-year food supply kit or something. I would love to be able to put Verum is saying I would love to put School of Darkness. Usually they're reading School of Darkness. I'd love to put that book up, but I'm pretty sure it has a current copyright. That's why I've been shying away. I've shied away from that. Same with AA 1025. I'd love to do that one too. McCarrick is definitely still around. The edits in Extra Ecclesiam Nullisalis does know about the edits in the Extraordinary Form. Yeah, they're pretty eye-opening once you learn about what they are. I have covered Belladad in the past. I probably will revisit. One of the things I would love to do is get Trad Patrick on, who knows a lot about the Lodge, and have him talk about that. He ancient but still here. He didn't get the beer bug, as I call it. They say it was a cold, and I mean, you may not want to believe that much of what they say, but trust me, they would take advantage of the fact if he had gotten that. God bless you too, Gabriel. If the Novus Ordo Mass is removed and Rome returns to tradition, what will be the future of diocesan priests? Most diocesan priests don't know Latin. They'd be getting a crash course in education, assuming that the current social order survives. Remember, chastisement is coming. I firmly believe that chastisement is coming. I'm not sure we can get away from it. I don't think so. Read Auctorium Fide. That's another one I should add to my list. I like occasionally doing older encyclicals. Like, I think next week I'll have an older encyclical. I actually have it already opened up on my desktop to... because sometimes these older encyclicals can be really, really, really eye-opening. Buy a 5-gallon bucket of cheeseburgers today. I worked at a gaming store once years and years ago. Like, we're talking the late 90s, right? I'm sitting there surrounded by guys playing Magic the Gathering and such, attending the counter. And my boss had 2 pieces of food that he kept under the counter to make a point. One was a Twinkie and the other was a McDonald's cheeseburger. And in the year I worked there, they never moved and they never molded either. Tell Trad Patrick to do a video on copyright and personal property. That's one of the things that I would like to. I'm willing to go into other areas on live streams, and I think copyright and personal property, and it fits in generally too with my question about that I don't know the answer to, which is sort of distributism and syncretism and corporatism and these other sort of ideas spawned from Catholic social teaching in the modern age. Like, a lot of people, well, one, they misattribute stuff Belloc said. Belloc said never said it would take socialism. That was a propaganda promoted by his enemies after his death, of course. And I've got the book on that coming. But I would love to see how these ideas apply in the internet age. I would also love to promote some Catholic small internet websites that do things like push they make sacramentals and things. I'd love to do that. How do you people even have access to all these different rites? Live in an area that's always been Catholic, but that's religiously dead, only known logistically. Tradition mass isn't even feasible. You're going to find most, in my experience, most Eastern rites are usually in urban areas. So in Portland, where I'm from originally, there was a Maronite parish there, and there was a Ukrainian Byzantine parish. Here in Oklahoma, where I'm at now, there is a Maronite parish in south and east of Oklahoma City. And I think that's the only Eastern liturgy available. Well, thank you, Betty. I try not to swing. I try not to swing above my weight class, as it were. I try not to reach above my pay grade. So I thank you for the kind thought. Let's see. Yeah, Teresa, I agree with you in general about the Sedevacantist question. I can't reconcile Sedevacantism with how long it's been and the church surviving. I just can't. Thoughts on Garen Bendal? I only cover approved apparitions, and that one has not been approved. And a good test for any apparition is go look for heresy, things that sound like Protestantism or the religion of the Saracens. Go look for that stuff, and you'll find that. So, for instance, there was one. I can't remember which one. There was an alleged apparition of Our Lady where it talked about the 1,000-year earthly reign of Jesus Christ. That's the heresy of millennialism. Easy enough. As soon as you see that, it's fake. So I don't know if that's Garen Bendal or not. And I know that there are some figures that I really appreciate who believed it, but I'm not one. What we are going through is our chastisement. I think this is at least the beginning, if not like part of it. I think the spiritual chastisement. I was always struck when during those Art Bell interviews of Malachi Martin's, where he would talk about the people kept trying to get him to reveal what the third secret was. They'd read him these things, and he says, no, it was worse. And none of them really got that. Never understood what our Lord said about not necessarily being afraid of those who can harm the body, but those who can kill the soul. A great apostasy is far worse than even like the death of nations, because we're talking about eternal salvation. It's hard to remember that in our day-to-day lives. Is why we sin, but NPS suggests looking up Robert Sungenis' content. I like Robert Sungenis. I find him interesting. That's about as far as I can go with it, though. The Ruthenian rite. Yeah, that's one thing I'd love to, again, it would be to have the conversation with somebody about what each of the rites are, or have a conversation with a couple of people. Ukrainian Catholics will do recited liturgies during the week. Yes, because they sing everything. About the only thing you don't hear sung at a Ukrainian Byzantine liturgy is the homily. The rest is sung, which is, it's not that different than a traditional Latin Mass either. Other than the traditional Latin Mass, the Domine non sum dignus is usually recited, as is a couple other small parts, but the rest is sung. Is playing video games wrong? In moderation, I don't think so. It's when it becomes a god, when it takes so much of your time that it's become pretty much a god, that you're sacrificing the time due to God for that. I personally think there are better things you can do with your time, but I'm not much of one to talk, because in my past I spent a lot of time playing like D&D and that kind of garbage, and the amount of time I wasted on that was embarrassing. So I can't really criticize people for wasting time. I haven't touched that stuff in a long time, and I don't think there's anything really demonic about it, but I just think it's not a useful use of my time. I'm not one who someone's asking me about the ecclesial ordination to determine if they're valid. I'm not one to be able to tell you if they're valid or not, because that's not my area of expertise. It's a video I wouldn't mind doing sometime, though. It would be just to talk, give it a provocative title of like, oh, look, the fruits of Vatican II, and then go over all of the changes that were made, and the increased number of Catholics versus the decrease in everything else. Closest Eastern rite to NPS is Harrisburg, 4 hours away. That's a bit. There are people who drive that distance. I've met somebody who came to a diocesan Latin Mass in Tulsa, and they drove like 2.5 hours from Kansas to get there, which is weird because probably the most famous fraternity parish in the country is in Tulsa, or at least one of the most famous ones. He's directly connected to Father Ripperger, Gilbert, Arizona has a Syrian, a Byzantine, and of course Roman Catholic Church, pretty close to each other. You're lucky to have 2 Eastern liturgies there. Total War legendary. I agree with you on Medjugorje. People, when they talk about the fruits of Medjugorje, they typically don't talk about the positives. They never talk about the divorces and things. But again, every time I mention it, people get really mad at me. I do think every Catholic should learn about the Eastern rites of the Church. Do I feel the attack of Daria asks everyone, do we feel the attack from evil spirits more furious? You would not believe, since I started this channel and really started getting, being able to provide a very, very basic support to my family with this, that this stuff I've dealt with, nothing like I would say supernatural, objects flying across the room or anything like that, but going to confession for stupid stuff, not making any progress on that stuff because and just the nature of it is so weird, and it's why in the last couple of years I've chosen more mortifying things to do for Lent. And last year I gave up all caffeine for all of Lent except on Sundays, and that first Sunday I wasn't sure if I should do it or not, and then our priest got up and gave a homily about how you can take and have your coffee if you give it up for Lent, and that actually made Lent a lot worse. It was more mortifying because I would get a caffeine headache for about half the week every week. It was great. But yeah, no, it's gotten worse. I don't know what that means exactly. Recently, especially evil used friends or family to attack us. I mean, I've had conflicts with family, usually about politics. I used to be a sort of a center-left Democrat. I never called myself a progressive. And after I converted, I got on my knees and prayed for God to correct my errors, and that was a roller coaster ride. And so, yeah, I've had issues with family. I've lost friends since becoming not just a Catholic but a tried Catholic. You get mad when Paulette says she gets mad when the media puts everything bad on Catholics. Well, I got to be careful how I talk about that, but yeah, you're true. It's true. Bishop Sheen's sainthood situation on hold indefinitely. The children of Cardinal Spellman have prevailed, at least for the time being. Let's see. I think Byrne is correct about the content of the alleged apparitions of Medjugorje. Saying D&D is evil like saying Tolkien's role is evil because of fantasy creatures. Just because it has magic and fantasy doesn't make it evil by extension. So yeah, no, you totally agree. I just don't think it's good use of my time. And it all depends. Like anything else, it depends on what you got to discern carefully, right? But there are people who think it's evil, and okay, they always try to say people are actually casting spells. I have never seen that happen ever. What I have seen people do is, if they were casting spells, they were casting gain obscene amounts of calories from drinking too much Mountain Dew. If anything, it's a total waste of time. Father Isaac Marie Aurelia, if that's who you're talking about when you say Father Isaac, he is very convicting to listen to. It's one of the reasons why I do enjoy listening to him. You do enjoy Total War video games from the name. Cool. Just, don't let it rule your life. Is all I say that about anything. I go to the gym 4 to 5 days a week, and for a while I wanted to start going twice a day. That probably would have been not the wisest thing for me to do. Padar says, D&D is as evil as your imagination. It's a role-playing game, and you can role-play as anything you want. Pretty much. That's pretty much true. If you keep finding yourself drawn to playing villains, that might be a problem. Let's see. Those attacks will be more frequent as more you fight against sin. Cheers, though, it means Satan hates what you do, and whatever Satan hates, I love. Which, yep, I would agree. The road to sanctity, people is often depicted, the paintings, the classic paintings of, carrying our cross and following Christ up the rocky hill is pretty accurate. You made the mistake going from 2 pots to no coffee. Don't do it. Oh, I am so sorry for you. When I decided in 2018 to give up coffee for Lent, or 2019 Lent, I started weaning back Christmas of 2018. I got back from my Christmas trip, and I started cutting my coffee with decaf. And even then, by the time, the week before Lent, I was having, not even much caffeinated coffee at that point. And when I went to full decaf or just water in the morning, I started getting these awful headaches. It was the greatest thing ever. Choral masses, a traditional mass that use Mozart music instead of Gregorian chant. I have never experienced one, and I hope not to. That doesn't sound like something I'd want to do. Oh no, I did experience one, but it was a Novus Ordo mass. It was a wedding several years ago, and they used Mozart's music. If people want like a more musically rigorous traditional Latin mass, look up the Institute of Christ the King Sovereign Priest, and I'm sure there's some SSPX equivalent of that group too, where they use polyphonic chant. It's absolutely beautiful. I've never been able to go, and I think there's a parish 8 hours from me. So, what's my perspective on Garam Bendal and the warning? I don't really look into Garam Bendal because it was not approved by the church. Thoughts on Chesterton? Chesterton's a hero of mine. I have several of his books on his shelf, and I think he gets maligned by people wrongly because he was not a socialist, nor was his philosophy of socialism. He hated socialism. Where can you get 30 authentic Gregorian masses said for a loved one that passed away? Not sure who to trust. First, you got to find a priest who knows what a Gregorian mass is. I have my suspicion a lot of priests today don't, and that's not a slam against, diocesan priests of the so-called ordinary form. The Devil in the City of Angels, I have not. I would love to interview him though, but I want to be, I want to be able to get to live streaming as being second nature. Would I consider doing a video promoting the Little Office of the Blessed Virgin Mary? Beautiful devotion that's largely fallen by the wayside. When I finally tire of doing my quarterly videos on the 5 for Saturdays devotion, I will. But for now, I feel like I have to get as many people as possible to keep the 5 for Saturdays, because we have totally, I say collectively as Catholics, have ignored the laity part of the Our Lady's request at Fatima to keep the 5 for Saturdays devotion. Supposedly Link from the Legend of Zelda is Catholic. I'm pretty sure he's an elf. Old official piece of art from Nintendo of Link praying before a crucifix in a church. Maybe, I don't know. By the time I played Link, I was a teenager, so I don't know. Byrne, I appreciate that. I could use people's prayers just in general, just to, for perseverance and to, not be so stupid as to keep sinning. I honestly think committing mortal sins is stupid, but then again, why do you think the analogy of the shepherd and the sheep thing is pretty accurate? I think if you understand sheep at all, compared to the divine mind, we're pretty dumb. The youth of Garam Bendal don't remember. It was like a dream, not like other apparitions. That is weird. I was not even aware of that. GSO, I just drink tea. Yeah, you'll probably have less hypertension to deal with from that. Should we expect more videos of pining on cats? They've been amusing diversions. No, unless you can find more essays by the types of people I read that I read on the weekend on cats, but otherwise probably not. Excuse me. God bless you, Extra Ecclesiam. Nolan Salas, enjoy your mass. King County in Washington State just told all 2.2 million residents to stay at home. Work from home. Yeah, and I've got family in Portland, and that's not that far, so. Well, happy birthday to your wife, John Doe. And yes, please pray for her conversion. She's apparently a Buddhist. Oof. Good that you don't let that rule you. Our hobby shouldn't rule us. Your priest has an opera voice. That must be very nice. His singing reminds me of pop music in some ways. It sounds appropriate, but some of his cadence, it just reminds me of that for some reason. It's one of the reasons I try not to go very often to that one. You were still a Protestant, John Doe, when you were married. Oh, that makes more sense. I think these days it would be hard for a parish to okay someone getting married in the church with a those mixed marriages. If you go to a good parish anyway. So the story I hinted at earlier, because I just saw somebody saying about how their family didn't like the Latin of the Latin Mass. Well, we briefly hosted an exchange student last fall, and it didn't work out well. She was Catholic. Her family was from a European country and they went to Mass twice a week, which puts them in the upper crust of the elite Mass goers in their country. And we brought her to the traditional Latin Mass, and she was fine with it at first because our choir had the month off when she got there. So it was all low Masses. She hated the high Mass. was too long. She eventually moved on to another host family, and I was sad. But, maybe we'll try the homeschooling or the host family thing again someday with be a little more explicit in our own profile that says we're, hardline Catholics. NPS, actually, he was a cat person. There's a second video on Catholics. Go watch the video conversation with a cat. You'll see it. He actually liked cats. He just, I have a cat. But I do recognize that they can be pretty disturbing creatures at times. And yes, Bella can be wrong on stuff. He wasn't infallible. Jeep guy's all in for the 5 for Saturdays. Good on you. Reality of the Novus Ordo Mass is the extraordinary form, and the Tridentine Mass is the ordinary form. Yeah, even if it's not in practice. I think it will be again someday. There was a diocese around here that started offering to train all their priests in the extraordinary form, as they call it, because they're discovering that they've started noticing that Novus Ordo Missae, the Novus Ordo parishes tend to be, average age of like 55 or 60, and traditional Latin Mass parishes have a much lower average age, and they can read the writing on the wall with that. How do we donate to this podcast, Jeep Guy? Well, there's the super chat option. You can become a patron through Patreon or Subscribestar, or you can click the join button on the channel. There's a lot of different ways to do it. Drinking tea has made you feel so much better. Tea has antioxidants in it, as I understand. It is very difficult to find traditional priests in Maine. Have you looked up the Latin Mass locator online? It only gives you like the approved masses, so you're not going to see like the SSPX on there, but the SSPX have their own locator. Do you dislike the NO so much? Is that wrong? I don't go to the Novus Ordo if I could possibly help it, only because I find that instead of being convicted like I am at the traditional Latin Mass by the piety of the people around me, I start like almost convicting others in their mind. It becomes a dangerous thing for me, and I know that's a fault of mine completely, and I accept that it's a fault of mine, and I'm working on it. But I can't stand the holding invisible Bibles thing. That imitating the priests. The sign of peace bugs me so much. Well, okay, John, your name is Ray. Well, hello to you, Ray. Try this site run by Franciscan Missions that will do 30 Gregorian Masses for donation. Could you, John and PA, could you email me a link to that, please? Because I actually have a video I want to do as a sort of an alternative way to give to the church in a way that, because I know a lot of people don't want to give money to the church, the not one penny thing, and I have an alternative way to do it, and if you could email that to me, that would be great. The true Novus Ordo, it really isn't that bad if done right. One of the times I went to a Novus Ordo Mass, it took me a minute to realize it was Novus Ordo, because it was being done by the Dominicans. It was in Latin. The whole thing was chanted. The thing was extremely reverent. The only reason I even found myself there is because the Sunday before we had gone to a Dominican Rite traditional Latin Mass, which if you've never been to the Dominican version, it's pretty cool. Oh, let's see. Any predictions on how chastisements will happen and what order events may happen? I try not to make too many predictions like that, but if you start seeing real signs of war with Russia, I'd hit the grocery store and maybe go spend some time out in the country. I know that Lois Erlmeyer's chastisement warnings were related to war, and they all said things like the country that with the beer bug would work with Russia, and that country would attempt foolishly to invade the U.S. It doesn't work out too well for them, apparently, but the Russians would cut right through Europe. That's, again, Catholic prophecy, so you don't have to believe it, just that's what it says. That's why I again, always get upset when I see people trying to do things like, beat the drum for war with Russia, and I don't care what political party they are. Like, I joke on Twitter. If you follow me on Twitter, I say a lot more political things than I do on YouTube. And it always strikes me as funny that the party of Moloch, as I call them, are now the new Cold Warriors. It's so funny to me. What is the deal with the Latin Church saying rock and roll is a sin? Some rock songs would be pretty great, but as with secular songs, they'd be pretty bad songs. Well, Byzantine, I got in trouble on Twitter because I said things about when they were like, what secular songs do you like, or secular artists do you like, and I listed the ones I liked, and they're all on the really hard rock side of things, and I only listen to secular music these days at the gym or on a long drive when there's not a podcast to listen to, or when I'm cleaning the house. That's about it. But they say some pretty good priests say it has to do with the concupiscible appetite being sort of triggered by the music. Although I never had that happen with me, so whatever. But I could see it. I think people need to be extremely discerning about that stuff. Joe Paulo 31675 says, my issue with Medjugorje are the seers. One seer said the Virgin almost dropped Christ. Yeah, I did a video on that and a lot of people were mad. I mentioned that. But I watched it. It was just surprising. I'm trying to remember what that's a response to NPS. Oh, the other one, yeah. The other cat video, yeah. Take care of Aram. You're probably gone by now. Always wondered about what it would be like as a Catholic to host an exchange student. You can, if you go with a good company, you can actually request to have a Catholic student. That helps a lot. I didn't want to have, a kid who would show up and be an atheist and then be left alone in the house for 6 hours because we had gone to mass. Oh, let's see. Ever hear about the satanic witches that put hexes on music and the CIA weaponized it too? I've heard about that. I suspect that the bands they did that with were awful anyway. And the CIA's, I know about the military's use of it overseas to drive people crazy with by using it for sleep deprivation, both in jails as well as in just in occupied areas. But they also do that with pop music. I honestly think if you're looking for satanic music, go look at the top 40 hits. It's all hedonism and grossness. Is it okay not to pray the Luminous Mysteries? I haven't prayed the Luminous Mysteries in a long time. I find they're an interesting devotion, but John Paul II said they were optional, so they're optional by his own words. Clayton Lee, I've hated the Sign of Peace ever since it was started. Yeah. Any traditional churches are hours away. Yep. Would it be possible to within 5 years? If by you mean like restore the traditional Latin Mass within the next 5 years? That would take a massive sea change in the church for that to happen. I think you're going to see it I think you'll see a greater access to the traditional Latin Mass as time continues to go on. I think the cat's out of the bag on it. Don't believe there's actually a priest shortage, only a temporary disproportion. The thing about it, Katie, that I find interesting about that is when you hear the stories about like traditionally minded young men being kicked out of seminaries for being, having Marian devotions and things. I came to this conclusion that the priest shortage was mostly manufactured. A lot of people won't like that, but Russia versus Turkey and Idlib. Yeah, that situation is mildly terrifying. You missed what beer bug means. It's a big thing in the Teresa. It's the thing in the news causing people to panic. It's actively being frowned upon by our electronic overlords at the moment. So, one thing about the thing is that maybe they'll stop handshaking in mass. We can only hope. Yeah, that's the one thing I don't like about is the idea of every Catholic being forced to drive an hour for mass. I understand like people not wanting to do the long drive I do to go to the Latin Mass. I won't neg anybody for that. Let's see. I believe we're living Fatima now. I think all the messages of Our Lady, most of the major Marian apparitions, all are linked in that way. All is grace. I don't want to go into that just because it caused people to get mad at me last time, and it's all pretty pedestrian dad rock stuff. But it's rare. I go to it's either listen to that or have to listen to a podcast while I'm lifting weights while there's far worse secular music playing over my in the PA, and I just don't know if I can do that. Your dear priest is 85, real trad Latin all the way. Funny thing about the area that you're going to, the GLM is closer than the Novus Ordo. That's funny. There are people who live like in the neighborhood right around in the parish I go to, and it's located right off an industrial park. But you thought you might be free. Daryl thinks that he would be disobedient if you. Yeah, I do agree that the Luminous seems to be disrupted rhythm, but I remember explicitly John Paul II saying they were optional. Don't let anybody ever tell you it's bad. I don't give people, guff about it, but, Where can you find the second half of the third secret? Probably locked away in the in a Vatican place somewhere. I actually don't. I'm not even sure the what we got was real either. It reads too much like the Pius X prophecy. It's too short for me to do a video on by itself. But there's enough indications that the thing was probably not real that I have concerns. I'm still going to work on my video series on it, but yeah, it's one of the Medjugorje Cedars has a villa on the island of Hvar in the Adriatic Sea. Well, the email and the Gregorian Masses will be on the way in a couple of minutes. Thank you, John and P. I appreciate that. Any advice for young traditional adults waiting to get married, but everyone says to wait until after finishing colleges? Yeah, don't wait. Don't wait. Wait, like, my wife and I, quote unquote, dated, if you want to call it that, for a year, and then we got engaged and we're married 7 months later. 8 months later. I asked her to marry me on my birthday because I was crazy bold like that, and we were married in August, so 7 months later. Bella Dodd. Yeah, I've mentioned her in videos before. I should probably revisit her soon enough. Not that many rock songs are actually about the devil. Most of the time, it's just the ones you hear about. Like, I can't stand like the feathered hair bands of the '80s. They sing about that a lot. Katie drove an hour to the FSP for 3 years and moved to the ghetto to be close to the parish. It's a worthy exchange. And you know what? You can, by doing that, if you and a few others move to that neighborhood, you'll actually improve the neighborhood too. And you could be a good witness to the people who live there. And you'll be able to do good works of mercy and things like that. And P.S. I do agree. Like, after having I'm almost done with my PhD, and I feel robbed and lied to. There's literally, like, college, 99% of people don't need to go to a university. They just don't. You can use the Goodwill Hunting rule of just learning from overdue fees from a library and go to trade school. I worry about the day when they try to corrupt the trade schools, though. Father Hess is right. The church is supposed to provide as far as mass goes, and Summorum Pontificum gives you the access to that mass if enough of you in a parish want it. Do I think Pope Francis should be confronted by the cardinals? I don't know what that would accomplish. I mean, if they thought they could accomplish something, but at the end of the day, there's this idea that the bishops or the cardinals as a body have the same power as him, and they don't. They just don't. That's why I don't talk about like the real Pope issue much, because there's no way out of the situation until a future council is called by a Pope to address the errors of the age. And that I pray that I live to see that day. I really want to see that day. In this terrible age of atheism, any Christian church is 100%... Well, maybe. When I was in downtown Portland, there were plenty of what I called occupied churches. They were ones with those really colorful flags or the other political flags, and their sermons were political. That's all I talked about. I heard Agnes Hasegawa says that the second half of their secret was missing. I'm not sure how she'd know that, unless, of course, you heard it from Our Lady. You dated your wife for 2 months for proposing. You are happy? Good. I hope your marriage is long and fruitful. Also, if you could pray for my wife and I. My wife obviously wants a second child, and we have a healthy Catholic marriage. And I'm like 40, and my wife is in her early 30s. So prayers would be helpful on that. You're trying to get married as soon as possible. You have waited long enough. Honestly, if you and your bride to be have discerned that you are ready, then start talking to your priest or if you're at a Novus Ordo parish, your permanent deacon, whatever, whoever you need to at your parish, and see what about the ball getting the ball rolling. Yeah, you have rockers encouraging people to be Christian. No, it's true. Although I do think it's partially because, at least part of it might be because being Christian is countercultural, and that is sort of the ethos of rock and roll, is to be countercultural. So it's probably part of it, at least. Was Dorothy Day a leftist Catholic? She was a leftist who became a Catholic. She had some really wacky ideas, and that's why I don't generally lump her in with like with distributism, even though I think she embraced it herself. Heard that Cardinal Burke implemented the Institute of Christ as King of Sovereign Priest to infiltrate the church from the inside out. Take her back. Any thoughts on that? It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, if you're looking for reverent in a mass, you're going to be hard pressed to find something more reverent than that organization. And PS trying to learn traditional laboring skills. No, those are good. Those are very good. I wish I was good with my hands. Your daughter, Lord Bluntwell's daughter, is doing an electrical apprenticeship. That's useful skills. Congratulate. Don't. Thank you, Kimberly. But don't congratulate me yet. I hate my dissertation. I'm having to play the game of making a much more moderate dissertation on Catholic social teaching than I actually want to. But I'm actually getting my dissertation in the policy implications of Catholic social teaching, and it's why I get so angry when I hear people talk about Catholic social teaching, opining on it when half the time it doesn't seem like they really know what they're talking about. I don't mean like lay people. I mean like the people who put themselves in the public eye. Father Hess helped found the Institute Christ the King, according to him. Interesting. Dorothy Day may have actually had a good idea about Catholic communities that are self-sufficient. She may have. I'm not familiar with what she said on it. Paul confronted Peter, and Peter renounced his Judaizing heresy. Yes, I'm aware. That's why I'm just not sure what it would accomplish today. But maybe it would. I don't know. And it depends what people mean by the cardinals and the bishops confronting him, too. Byzantine says, what I have noticed about music in general is that you get edgy young artists trying to get noticed by being loud and obnoxious. However, they tend to mature as age. This is true. One of the bands that I like to listen to sometimes at the gym, it's always their newer stuff, which is much more mellow and less aggressive vocals. And it's the early stuff that is super edgy. And it's like, as these guys get older, they lose it. They lose the ability to be angry about things. And it's definitely true. I'll make it available to the public NPS. I'll probably have it be available. Probably I'll make it public on the weekend. Thank you, GSO, for praying for me and my family. Do have many children? Yes, please. If you want to bring restore tradition in the church, have a lot of kids. That's all I'll say on that. Church was already begun to be infiltrated at the turn of the 20th century, while it was only noticed at the end of the first. By the turn of the 20th, that's why Pascendi was written. I mean, I heard a criticism from somebody I know of one of the major books on this subject that was popular recently, that to do proper justice, you have to do a 1,200-page book, like an E. Michael Jones-length book, to do it proper justice. Frog Twitter. I hope the Groypers to their channel that energy into a positive thing. Clayton League says they got married at 45 and have 3 children. It is not too late. Thank you, Katie, for the prayers. The errors of that's like a long time ago. If you want to get pregnant, try a low-carb diet for a few months. Well, that won't help me get pregnant, and my wife doesn't like low-carb. I used to do the low-carb thing, and I talked to her about it, and as soon as I told her that you can't have milk on a low-carb diet, she got sad. That's how you know, Byrne, that says that's how you know we are in the end times, when being Christian is considered a fringe counterculture view. That, or we're on one of those historic turnings that people talk about. That is a video I wanted to do from the beginning of my channel that I haven't done, is the whole, the concept of the cycles of history, great turns, that kind of thing, because I think there's at least some truth to it. Your brother's a psychology major, has to play the game. Yeah. I will probably never work in academia because I just can't lie that much. NPS's class was canceled. Have a good one, Paulette, if you hear this later. The coming persecution of Christians in the West, the attitudes about Christians from a lot of younger people really terrifies me, and especially from the new Europeans and new Americans. Why do we feel like you agree on so much? Great minds think alike. I don't know. Being a traditional Catholic, doesn't mean you go to the traditional Latin Mass, right? That's why you usually hear me say traditionally minded Catholics, people who want the faith. At the end of the day, someone asks me what I want, my goals for what I do with my channel. At the end of the day, all I want is the same faith that was taught to Catholics 70 years ago, the same faith that was taught to Catholics 100 years ago, 500 years ago. Yes, I understand the development of doctrine. Okay, but you understand what I mean by the same faith. That's all I want. Perhaps playing the game will require debate-like format. I don't know, maybe. Novella, yeah, I'll post it. Which in turn calls into question every single council. Yeah, well, it may not, because Paul VI said that the Second Vatican Council didn't define any dogmas and didn't claim to be infallible, that the only things infallible in that council were previously defined infallible teachings. What I actually much more expect is a lot of those, the errors or the ambiguous statements to be clarified in a way that are actually in line with the traditional faith. And when that happens, the upheaval is going to be massive. Many clerics outright do deny that extra ecclesiam nullisalis is real. And they were doing, and as Fahm says back in the 30s and 40s, yeah, modernism isn't a today thing. Money takes away the anger. Yeah, that's true about those rock musicians, maybe. Or they just get tired of it. There was a musician I liked who... he got tired of making angry music all the time, so he broke up his extreme band and started making experimental melodic hard rock stuff where he was only angry like 5% of the time. So he said he just got tired of it. Aquinas laws, I agree that there's probably a persecution coming, and there's already one going on anyway. I mean, you just go look at the stuff coming out of the Middle East and Africa. Let's see. We have to read scripture with our children. Yeah, my child's a little young for that right now. He usually crawls around the floor with his small child's rosary, like that he shakes around while my wife and I do our rosary. But we're, putting the seeds down early. It's unusual for me to find actually tradition-minded Catholics in the West. Usually I come across Westerns who like the smells and bells, so they end up persecuting. No, like some of the... what I always tell people, or the way I think about this is this. It's funny, like some of the best Catholics I know are in the Novus Ordo, honestly. Some of the most pious people I know are Catholics I know who are friends of my wife or friends of mine who go to the Novus Ordo. And the worst Catholic I know is a Latin Mass Catholic. And that worst Catholic I know is me, because I'm the only one who knows what the only internal disposition that I know of is my own. Ordinary magisterium is the only infallible when they are not contradiction of the previous pronouncement. Yeah, I did a video a long time ago on papal infallibility, and all I did was really just read what the Church teaches on that. Vatican II documents as a whole must be held to be sententia pro bellis or communicis, most of it meaning as common teaching amongst theologians, and pro bellis meaning free opinions. Joe Paulo says that they are traditional Catholic and they don't have Latin Mass anywhere 2 hours away. Yeah, I know people who make that drive, but I also understand why people can't make that drive. NPS, well, you go to one of the better ones then. Joshua says they travel 1.5 hours away for the Latin Mass. Yep, same with my wife. In fact, my wife and I do that too. A lot of 20-something young families with ambitions of big families. That's exact. You just described my parish, basically. So it don't look like there are any more questions here, unless the live chat is behind. Let's see. Yes, John, I have gotten that email for the Gregorian Mass and the website related. There's one of my patrons just sent me a message on Patreon saying that he is going to go meet with someone from his parish to discuss converting and actually entering the church properly. So please keep him in your prayers. Byzantine, I'd been trying to do a live stream for months. I couldn't figure it out because all the videos I saw online weren't helpful. And this enabled me to get online. Now I need to figure out the way to hook Discord up as the recording thing so I can actually have guests, because that's actually what I'd like to do. I'd really like to have more people on. Have I seen the Fatima Center Vid channel? Oh yes, I've been watching them for years. To start a Catholic YouTube channel, stay focused. And just be real with people, and I honestly don't think people should take on more authority than they're qualified to. I won't judge other people publicly about what they're doing, but know what your limits are and stay within what your limits are. Aquinas says modernism came along with the Romantic era, the Enlightenment, and all the revolutions west, and that's true. Burn, you sounds like you go to a good parish. You have a pretty good parish then. If I believe Montini was a pope, again, I am not a sedevacantist, so your logic doesn't follow. Do a video about the cardinals against cardinals and bishops against bishops. I'm kind of confused about whom is actually for church and whom is not. I did my we were warned video on Our Lady on both of the Our Lady of Akita apparitions, the first and the alleged second one, and I expressed some skepticism about the second one, even though I also said it was true, factually true what they were saying. So I just, in this age of fake news, I'm so nervous now about things. What news sources do I watch? Mostly stuff on YouTube from independent sources. I can't do cable news. I just can't. I truly believe they get down on their knees and receive our Lord on the tongue. Is it okay to eat blessed salt? I've heard Father Ripper or others say you should put blessed salt on your food. So, do you do a bit on the various Catholic sects? I'm a convert and a little confused. What do you mean by different sects? Do you mean like the if you send me an email and just outline what you want, what you're asking for, because I when it comes to that kind of thing, I need to know what you want. I'd like to know what you mean though. Condi, yeah, I don't know about anything in broadly. I'm just saying like this. Some of the best Catholics I know are Novus Ordo Catholics. They just are. They're the most pious. Some of the most pious people I know who live traditional lives and have an honest love for our Lord and Our Lady and are teaching their children the true faith, go to the Novus Ordo Parish. It's a 2-minute drive from where I'm sitting. NPS, yeah, I totally understand the more than 3 kids space thing. I understand. Apparently Total War Legendary has a YouTube channel. Your married priest from the Ukraine believes the UGCC needs a bigger presence on the internet for the Westerners. I will tell him what you say. Thanks. I think there's an underrated YouTube live show. It's the one Father Heilman does with, Doug Barry. That's one of the more underrated ones, I think. And I like that format because it's a priest with a layperson. That way there isn't any ambiguity about like authority to teach people and give spiritual advice because there's a priest there. And, if an Eastern Rite priest wants to do a show targeting, Westerners, that would be probably be very valuable. And I'd help promote it. Oh, Japalo, I'm sorry about that. My wife was, I think, reticent only for like a few minutes before we got to the Latin Mass the first time we went. The reverence and the beauty of it was, sold her immediately. Liz, yeah, the pride you see among trads online is real. I think that it's a problem with the internet in general. The internet magnifies our pride. It's one of the reasons I haven't gone on camera yet. The other is I want to lose a bunch of weight. And I don't have the $1,000 camera and lighting set up, but there's a lot of vanity with the internet. I'm prideful enough. I don't need to complicate things. But Twitter, for instance, is like a hellscape. It really is. Like, people will shout at each other more there than they would in like face to face in real life. Chief Guy, I fundamentally disagree with the Bishop Schneider as a company puppet thing. I just disagree with it. People are free to have their opinions. I'm not gonna, go after people for it. My rule of life is that we all suffer through the diabolic disorientation that has entered the church, and it makes finding out what the truth is possible. Which is why I always tell people just go to what the church taught, more than 60 years ago. And before that, you'll be fine. Not to say there isn't some good stuff coming out now either, but you'll still, there's more than enough out there. When is my guest appearing on the stream? We couldn't figure out the technical issue, so we're going to work on it again sometime in the near future. You think the Dusty says they think the Sedevacantism